Epic CTO says next-gen consoles will cross the uncanny valley.
That sounds like a hot take. Hello everyone, and welcome again to the world of broken promises and hopes and dreams that never actually happen. This is really something that we see pretty much every single generation, where we get some really amazing tech demo where they only show a face, and then they go, oh, look how great it looks, and then it never actually comes out, at least not this or even the next generation.
We've been seeing this for several years with, like, you remember the demo with the bald dude?
Yes, I do.
Had all the wrinkles and stuff, because everything else looked okay, but hair was still an issue, I think.
Yes.
And then, it's like every year at different conferences, we do see these demos that are supposed to be the proving grounds for this next step in tech. And, even with the demos that we've seen this year, it doesn't seem quite like they're there. It seems like...
It's good.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good.
Okay. It's
yes.
not to say that, what we're seeing is terrible.
Look, after a couple drinks, you watch that thing, it looks like there's a real person in front of you. But that's just the thing, okay?
Right.
It doesn't look completely real, but it looks real enough that it's passable for some.
Right.
And then it just has that nice kind of, oh yeah, I can tell that this is a real performance by someone.
So we were having this conversation, and we were looking at the Unreal 4,
the Ray Trace engine demo.
Yeah. So we were looking at the Ray Trace demo, and we were looking at two other demos as well. So the Ray Trace demo was with Star Wars assets, and we're like, okay, yeah, it's pretty cool. And then we did see two others. One was with Andy Serkis, and it was very impressive as well. And we were having a conversation, and I said, okay, yes, they have crossed the uncanny valley. But then I quickly sort of backtracked, and it was because I was convinced that, yes, it does look good. The motion does look fluid. It does look like Andy Serkis. It's capturing his performance very well, but it still feels like CG.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel realistic. It feels good, but that doesn't mean that it surpassed the uncanny valley bar.
I agree. We're seeing a lot of companies that are trying to get into the whole idea of doing ray tracing as a standard for their game engines. So what ray tracing is essentially more of a premium way to render graphics out, and typically ray tracing was really limited to larger movies and stuff like that because it takes a lot of power from your system to do. But now they're capable of doing it in real time with modern hardware, or at least future hardware.
Right.
And you're seeing a whole bunch of companies do it. It's not just Epic. You're also seeing companies like, I think it's Remedy with their next game. The rumor is they're going to try and do a ray trace engine, but we don't even know that if that's true or 100% yet. But we do know that they actually had a demo that they showed off recently to basically show this open room bar thing.
Yeah.
And they're like, doesn't this mug look real, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so like we are seeing the tech being sort of pushed for the PC and on very powerful PC hardware, and like not being able to cross that uncanny valley for us on that PC hardware, and then thinking about that, the next gen of consoles. Consoles are always a few steps behind PC.
That's true.
So like the chances of that actually being a thing, having the tech in those machines cross the uncanny valley, I think it's likely not going to happen. A lot of what we've already seen, I just keep going.
Go.
A lot of what we've already seen, like, is about as impressive to me as seeing Uncharted 4.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And it seems like a couple little steps further than what we had seen with some of those demos.
Well, see, what's wonderful about Uncharted 4 is every time they showed off the game at the very beginning, they showed a background and sometimes two characters in the same scene. More often than not, they had body parts. The concept here is that they're showing you a face. Now, here's the thing. We've seen this, Adam and I have seen this multiple generations going now, where they basically show you a face and they go, look how realistic it looks. That's cool. It's a demo.
Yep.
In a real game, you've got the world, you got the environment. Do you honestly think they're going to be making Grand Theft Auto 6 with ray tracing elements where everybody's face looks like that next generation? It's not going to happen.
Probably not. Yeah.
Right?
So, I do think there's some validity to showing the human face, because supposedly to the human eye, that's like the most complex thing, right? But yeah, in these demos, they can make the face pretty compelling, but even then, it's not quite crossing the uncanny valley, right?
So I basically did a lot of research on this a while ago, because while we were taking a look at video game engines and rendering processes and stuff like that, there were some ideas that came into this. It also affected the way that we actually shoot YouTube videos as well. Now, right on the top, this is something you're going to have to deal with. These games have to run at a high frame rate. This isn't an option. If you run these games at 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second, they're not going to look realistic enough because they're going to look like movies.
You're thinking locked 60 at least?
Locked 60, if not even higher, if they can provide, right?
That'd be crazy.
The faster the frame rate is, the more realistic it looks to real life, and that's basically what you're going to get there. I know there's a lot of you out there that don't think there's a difference between 30 and 60 frames per second. That's cute and wrong, but realistically, that's a problem that a lot of people out there are going to have. If you look directly at a low frame rate game compared to a high frame rate game, those larger frame rates are going to be an issue because you see more information and your brain processes that faster. Now, on top of that, we are still at a time where 4K is mighty hard to get to. And the idea that we're going to be introducing ray tracing engines and stuff like that into the next generation of consoles, it's like, okay, we're moving to a 4K future. This is a really important thing. TVs are going to be going there no matter what. Even if you don't think you're ever going to upgrade to 4K, you essentially will because your TV is naturally going to have that.
I feel like trying to find a 1080p TV right now is like you can find them, of course, but there's just as many, if not more, 4K options out there.
Well, what the idea is right now, go out and try and find a CRT in any store. It's almost impossible.
I would love to find a CRT in a store.
Likewise, I really would too. Us retro gamers want that, but we had to basically get to a point where we're now creating technology and finding ways to make older video game systems work on our modern TVs. And that's just the way that is.
So talking about tech and like kind of veering off for a second, we've talked about like the fidelity of the graphics and stuff, but as far as tech's concerned, even the way that you capture like acting in real time for these video games, it still seems a little bit like it's not where it needs to be. We discussed this, right?
Yes, we did.
So we had seen another tech demo from GDC. It was with a Chinese actress, Bing Ji Zhang, I believe, right? They skinned her over another actress in real time, and it looked pretty good. Again, it didn't quite surpass our expectations.
This time you did see her full body, though, so that's like a big step forward because now she has hands.
Yeah, well, but what I'm alluding to here is that even though a lot of what we saw looked pretty good, her actions still felt stilted, felt kind of weird and janky because of the way that we capture things now.
Yes.
Like, hardware is still an issue. The actress doing this still has a gigantic helmet and maybe like 20 pounds on her head, so her movement becomes
a little weird.
Yeah, a little bit like a puppet or like a doll or something.
And then the capture technology doesn't capture every single facet, so artists have to go in and actually fill in the missing pieces. And that's the kind of stuff that you never really think about when doing this kind of work, but it's not true to life, right? Somebody's there and they have to fill in the pieces because those pieces just aren't being captured in a way that the computer can understand. For instance, a great example of this, L.A. Noire. Now, L.A. Noire had a whole bunch of people sitting in rooms, and then they were recording their faces.
It sort of pioneered the facial capture.
Yeah.
It was
now, L.A. Noire is a long time ago at this point, right?
Yeah.
But the concept was that you would get these realistic performances. Now, I still think that game has a really neat look to it, and they were able to capture some pretty interesting facial responses.
True. Yeah.
But this is actually something a lot of people didn't realize. Go watch the special features for the game. They captured the faces and they captured the body movements on separate days. They were not captured at the same time because they couldn't do everything at the same time. What you were seeing here was a little bit more impressive because they were capturing the facial movements and they were capturing the body at the same time. But even then, you have to wear a lot of gear. You have to do that.
Exactly.
When they start removing those elements and they start thinking about the way that Uncharted deals with it, you get better performances because there's an artist going in and actually doing a little bit of extra work in between the scenes,
yes,
right?
Which is necessary. So when we can get to a point where, like, not only is your graphics card amazing and your processor is amazing, but, like, we get to a point where there's not a bunch of hardware and there's not a bunch of other people that have to, like, butt in and kind of tweak things, that's when we'll get that sort of relaxed capture and the uncanny valley can dissipate a bit more, right?
It really has to do a lot with the hardware that's going to be presented to us in the next generation because, personally, I think we're going to be seeing the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox 2 and whatever else.
Xbox 2.
Whatever they're going to call it. The idea, though, is that basically with those pieces of hardware, they're going to be trying to focus on 4K. And we're already struggling. I doubt, like the demos we saw were not in 4K, they were in HD. Now, I know there probably are some demos out there in ray tracing in 4K somewhere, but we are still at a point right now where many movies, many video games are still focused at a 1080p focus, and they're not even getting 60 frames per second yet. There's a heck of a lot of work they need to do. And until we've actually mastered 4K resolution, we're not going to be at a spot where everyone can just jump into it and start making games that utilize that hardware, or even be able to utilize that kind of engine to make it work for games.
Okay, quick question before we wrap things up.
Okay.
Do you think, as gamers, do you think it's incredibly important to get beyond that uncanny valley?
No. I don't believe at this point right now it's important. It's going to be important in the future. Maybe not next generation, but the generation after. We're going to get games that are going to get pretty close to how they look, but one of the biggest problems that exists is that some of the best games right now that are being sold do not have graphics that are essentially super realistic.
Right, and as people that play retro games, a lot of the enjoyment I'm getting currently, graphic fidelity doesn't matter. I don't need the HD textures, the 4K. I'm playing Pandora's Tower right now. Amazing game. Facial animations and stuff back in the day, were okay. And like now, I can tell that it's not the greatest, but I'm enjoying the heck out of it because it's a great game.
Yeah.
Right. So it comes down to that, that old saying that it doesn't matter how great your game looks or how powerful your console is if the software that you're playing on it isn't compelling.
What I really feel is most important to me is having a game run at a pretty decent frame rate, as long as the game requires a fast response time. With Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, that higher frame rate matters, and that makes the gameplay a lot more lively and energetic and interesting.
And that is a gorgeous game. I would say that game it's not more technically, some sort of monument as the demos that we've talked about, but it looks better in my opinion because it's just beautiful. The colors and everything. It's like a 1080p game, right?
But there's also the offset that new game Detroit, right? That game doesn't really have a lot of really intense sequences that require a high frame rate, so they can afford to go to a 30 frames per second limit because it doesn't really affect them too well. I believe getting to 60 is always going to be better, but if they can't, 30 is okay because that's a game with a lot of talking, a lot of like slow exploration. There are some movement sequences there where you're chasing people and action sequences like that, but the majority of the game really isn't like that.
Yeah, the media that we're consuming, gaming-wise, is growing, and it's still like I don't think we're going to reach a bar anytime soon where we're like, okay, this is it. We've captured everything the way that we can. The human eye can only get so much detail. Like there's still so many jumps that we have to make. It feels like so. I don't think it's going to be a next gen console uncanny valley killer coming out.
But let me say this. If this is the focus going forward with the industry, where you're going to have all these companies producing these engines that require a lot of work and a lot of processing power, this again is going to be something that might offend people that are really into the whole mobile gaming market, because both cell phones and the Switch are not going to be able to compete with these games because they're just requiring way too much hardware.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a mistake, right? If these game developers really want to utilize those kind of games, they should be making game engines that are utilizing that hardware better and making more advances in that regard. But I really feel like the stretch and the jump to keep going to 4K is pushing the industry in a space that is all about the graphics and fidelity and performance, and not so much on the way that we actually play the games, which can be a detriment to some.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
But folks, what do you think? Do you think that this game engine is really, really cool? Do you think that we're going to have games like this next generation? Or do you think it's going to be a little bit longer?
I don't know.
Let us know in the comments below.